All right, back again to talk about 10 more metal books. And the first one I'm going to look at is Mean Deviation: 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal by Jeff Wagner. I'm a big fan of Jeff Wagner. Currently, he's doing the Radical Research podcast, which I totally recommend you check out. Just about experimental and strange musics of all sort, especially metal. And he was editor of Metal Maniacs in, I'd say, the late 90s, early 2000s. And he's put out several books now, the most recent of which is going to be a Voivod book in the near future. So that's going to be cool. But, so as a title states, this is going to be talking about King Crimson, Rush, and just sticking with metal as it progresses. You got the Queensryche, Dream Theater, Fates Warning thing, leading all the way up to the really weird and technical extreme metals of the present day. Heavy Duty, the autobiography of K.K. Downing, formerly of Judas Priest. And it's just that. It's his life story, especially focusing in on his career with Judas Priest. And it does touch on his departure from the band. And I've heard a lot of people criticize this book, saying that it's just him whining about not being Judas Priest anymore. And I don't really get that impression at all. Solid book. Another autobiography. This is The Lost Gospels According to Al Jourgensen of Ministry. So Ministry, very famous industrial metal. The earlier stuff was more electronic music. They're still around to this day. I like old Ministry, mid-years Ministry. Filth Pig's my personal favorite. But this book is definitely pretty wild. He's definitely known for his substance issues over the years and crazy behavior. But this is definitely an entertaining book for sure. Again, he goes a lot into the drug stuff, and the one thing I found kind of funny was, not funny, but just sounds like he's given up the hard drugs, but currently he drinks like 100 beers a day or something like that, I remember in the book. But, yeah, Ministry. Kind of reminds me of another guy from that era, Henry Rollins. See a grown man cry, now watch him die. So this is just a compilation of Henry's work through, I guess, 88 to 91 and 1992. I read chapters here and there. I found this book, sometimes when people have those little free libraries outside their house, just as kind of a box thing by the side of the road saying, take one, leave one. And I saw that there, downtown Toronto, when I was just kind of walking around the neighborhood waiting to go to a show. I forget which one. My Riot, Agnostic Front, Grit, Guts, and Glory. This is by Roger Miret of Agnostic Front. Very important and one of the original New York hardcore bands. And they definitely were a part of getting a more metal sound into hardcore. I was more of a Madball fan growing up than an Agnostic Front fan, but those are brother bands, similar sound. And I learned a lot of new things in this book. Interesting story. The Beast by Paul Di'Anno, the first singer of Iron Maiden on the first 2 albums, the self-titled and Killers. And he was kicked out of the band for his uncontrollable behavior, is my impression. And definitely, judging by this book here, he definitely was a wild man. A lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in here. it's hard to know what to believe. I mean, how many groupies were really going to the early Iron Maiden shows, But entertaining book, and I never really listened to his music after Iron Maiden. I think he had a band called Battlezone. Ace Frehley, No Regrets, the autobiography of Ace Frehley from Kiss. I read all the members' autobiographies, but this is the only one that I own. And I'd say the best one is probably Paul Stanley's. It's the most in-depth, it's the most detailed, it's the most entertaining, and it's probably the longest as well. But I've heard a lot of people say that they have a negative opinion of it because Paul just thinks very highly of himself and blames everyone else for everything. But that's probably my favorite one in any case. This is probably my number 2. I don't think Gene or Peter's books are all that entertaining. Ace, probably my favorite member of Kiss. Anvil, the story of Anvil. So a lot of people have seen the movie. This is about Anvil, the heavy metal band from Toronto. And that movie definitely gave them a second buzz, and they are still making albums to this day. And I've listened to the odd one. They're okay. And I think, to be honest, I haven't read this book. My wife bought it for me, but I'd already seen the movie, so I didn't think I learned too much. But I've been kind of flipping through it, and I think there's going to be a lot of interesting details, especially for me. I think these guys spent a lot of time or are from Scarborough, which is a place I lived when I was young, so I'll probably get the reference points. And I guess one other thing about this is I had like a Razor hat, the Canadian band Razor, and I was walking just through the plaza around the corner from my house, and some guy kind of says like, "Hey, Razor," and we started talking. He was a somewhat older guy, and he was their buddy, Cut Loose, and I guess he has a small part in the movie, and I don't remember his part in the movie, but he's like their friend who tries to get them a job. So I guess he lives by me or something, and I think I gotta watch that movie again, see if I can find him. Another Canadian metal book. This is called Metal on Ice, Tales from Canada's Hard Rock and Heavy Metal Heroes. So for the Canadians out there, well, Voivod, there we go. Anvil. Slick Toxic. Here we go. There's a band called Toronto. Lee Aaron, Sacrifice. Sebastian Bach. He's Canadian. On the cover of Meat Magazine. I remember I used to get those for free at the record store back in the 90s. Maybe even back in the 80s. Nope, sorry, 1992. Finally, far from metal, but Serving the Servant. This is Remembering Kurt Cobain. I actually haven't made my way through this yet, but my father highly recommended it to me. He seems to, in his older age, be getting into Nirvana. He always kind of liked them, but his interest in them has grown. And says it's a great book, and one day I will get around to reading it. That's it for today. See you next time.